Part 2. When Jamin woke up, he felt like he had just gotten hit by a truck. Completely disoriented, he looks around the room. When his vision finally settled, he was horrified to find a thick metal chain restraining his left leg. He tried to remove it, but it was too strong. The girl was about to speak to J-Man, until they hear a door fly open and someone walking down the steps to the basement. J-Man immediately recognizes that the woman walking down the steps is the hag that gave them a place to stay. Immediately, the girl starts swearing at the hag, calling her every insult in the book. The hag responds by telling the girl, whom she addressed as Courtney, that her two friends had already been eaten and that if she didn't shut up, she'd be next. This silenced her. The words eaten frightened J-Man and apparently frightened Bob as well, as he woke up at this point. The hag then told J-Man and Bob something terrifying. She explained how she is a cannibal and resorts to kidnapping unworried travelers who happen to walk by her cottage. Being an old and feeble woman, her garden of fruits and vegetables is not enough nutrition to keep her alive. As she can barely tend to the gardens herself, she explained how she would force the three to work on the garden until the next harvest. It didn't sound too bad at first, as it really isn't hard to escape once one is outside. That was until she explained how they would be under the supervision of vicious Rottweiler dogs, who had been trained to attack and kill those who tried to escape the gardens. As the hag was walking out, she places the key on a weighing machine that had a string attached to a lever that was in return attached to an alarm. She explained how if the key was removed, it would trigger the lever to trigger the alarm, which would trigger the dogs in the house to attack and kill them. The three knew there was no way they'd be able to take on trained Rottweiler dogs without any defenses, especially since they didn't even know how many dogs there were. The hag then lets out a large cackle as she walks up the stairs and slams the door shut. Courtney buries her face in her hands, and J-Man and Bob are shocked at their situation, yet again. After a minute of silence, J-Man then tries to initiate conversation with Courtney by asking her how she got stuck in the house herself. J-Man and Bob discover that Courtney was a badass professional drug dealer who smuggled drugs to the United States from the Canada border as well as the Mexican border. She explained how she was on a drug trip from the Alberta Territory to Nevada. When on the road, they were discovered to be carrying drugs at a checkpoint and were chased by police on the road. To escape, they drove into a nearby forest, collected the drugs in backpacks, and left their vehicles behind. After a full day of hiking with no food or water, they came across a cabin and were given hospitality. When nightfall came, they were knocked out and woke up in the same basement they're in now. Since the harvest just happened to be at that time, her two friends were taken by the hag, butchered, and eaten for a main course. She has been trapped in the house for almost 2 months. The news frightened Bob, and he began to panic. J-Man tried his best to calm everyone down and establish communication. J-Man then explained how Bob and him got into the basement to Courtney. Courtney listened to the whole story, and the three talked until sundown, sharing stories and answering each other's questions. They were getting along very well and became friends quickly. For the next 3 weeks, the three friends worked the hag's gardens. Unfortunately, they were restrained at the ankles by large metal chains and stalked by Rottweilers constantly. Every time one of them would think of a way to escape, they were reminded that it was either they all escaped or none of them did, since the hag promised she would kill whoever remained trapped. It was boring work that lasted from 6 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. The hag eventually trusted them enough to be in the cage without restraints, which didn't really make much of a difference because there was nothing to do in there anyways. All of the three friends worked on different parts of the farm, so lack of communication gave them plenty of time to think of escape ideas, which they would discuss at nighttime. Harvest was coming up in 3 days, and still the friends had not put any of their plans into effect. The ideas were extremely exaggerated, and they simply did not have the tools to execute any of them properly. One day, the hag came down with an extra padlock made out of silver. She explained how she plans to make the cage extra secure. While she took the time installing the lock, a light bulb went off in J-Man's head. J-Man starts shouting insults at the hag, and even gets close to the edge of the cage to get up in her face. The prideful hag gets red in the face and tells him how she will enjoy killing him first. The yelling and arguments continue for a while until all of a sudden J-Man grabs the hag by her robe and pulls her to the metal bars of the cage in one quick motion, causing her head to bounce off the metal bar. This knocks her out temporarily. As she falls to the ground, the silver key to the padlock falls out of her robe pocket as well. J-Man grabs the key and unlocks the door. Courtney reminds J-Man to stay silent, as the Rottweilers will attack if they hear an escape attempt, even though they should be asleep at this time of night. They make their way upstairs and slowly open the door. Courtney whispers that she needs to get her stuff from the bedroom. Unwilling to risk Courtney putting their escape plan in jeopardy, they follow her. As they peek around the corner, they realize that the door is guarded by a Rottweiler. This is surprising to them, as next to all of the dogs were asleep at this time of night. When the dog wasn't looking, Courtney throws a chipped piece of drywall at the opposite hallway, causing the Rottweiler to bolt with that direction. Before it can look back, the three friends quickly make their way into the bedroom and close the door. Courtney opens a chest and finds her lighter, her gun, a cell phone, and a backpack containing large amounts of heroin and LSD. Courtney then explains that the hag has her food supply stored in the pantry. Carefully making their way around the dogs and almost being caught a couple of times due to Bob's clumsiness, they make their way to the pantry and sack it. After, they make their way to the back door and open it slowly. Luckily, no Rottweilers were guarding the back porch, as there is no garden there. Even though they were out of the house, the three friends still felt like they were not free. They booked it into the forest, sprinting as fast as they possibly could. Back at the house, the hag regains consciousness about an hour later. She realizes her prey is gone and limps frantically throughout the house looking for them. She makes her way to the pantry and finds that her food supply has been ransacked. She lets out a shrill scream of anger and runs to her room to grab a whistle. She blows it and orders the dogs to run into the forest to find and kill the three friends. The starving dogs then race into the forest looking for the prey. After about 2 hours of racing through the forest, the three friends hear howls in the distance. J-Man knows that the hag definitely has more than 10 Rottweiler dogs, and Courtney's gun only has about 6 rounds. J-Man tells them to move faster as the howls and barks get closer and closer as time goes on. Eventually, they reach the old wooden bridge that J-Man and Bob had to cross initially to get to the hag's house. They sprint over the bridge, and when they look back, they see a pack of about 12 bloodthirsty dogs emerging from the forest, heading straight for them. J-Man remembers the tractor that he had left next to the bridge from earlier. He races toward the tractor and opens the fuel tank. He orders Bob to get dynamite from one of the old mining shacks, and once the fuel tank releases the remaining oil it has, he orders Courtney to light it aflame. When Bob returns, J-Man orders for each one of them to light 2 pieces of dynamite and place them on the edge of the bridge. Bob, Courtney, and J-Man all light 2 pieces of dynamite and sprint to place them on the bridge. They race toward the bridge, but the dynamite is lighting fast. Courtney then screams to throw the dynamite at the bridge or else it will blow up in their hands. They all throw the dynamite at the bridge and sprint away as quickly as possible to gain some distance from the blast site. As they run, a huge explosion knocks them forward off their feet and they land on the ground. Debris and the sound of wood breaking fills the entire area. When the three friends get up and look back, they find half of the bridge gone and the Rottweilers barking in anger on the opposite side of the bridge. They all hug each other and are so happy to be alive, they are almost crying of joy. After the adrenaline has settled down, they make their way out of the forest and onto the road. Surprisingly, Courtney caught a signal on her phone and she was able to make a phone call to one of her local contacts in the area. About 2 hours go by until a red Corvette pulls up in front of the friends. Courtney thanks her friend for offering them a ride and tells J-Man and Bob to get in, reminding them not to worry since her friend won't be a mad serial killer. J-Man and Bob didn't even care about their major grade at this point. They were just happy to be alive after all they'd been through. The sun rises and the four drive south down to Texas with only a couple of scrapes and bruises.